All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is the Monday after the first Monday, right? It's the 9th. Yeah, June 9th. So what was it? Was it Memorial Day is, I guess, in May. I don't know. I get all these holidays confused. Father's Day is coming up, so that's my day, I guess. I'll have a nice day this Sunday coming up with my family. Hope you had a great weekend. I enjoyed mine. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. Today, I'd love to speak to you. No guests, and I had a couple of shows I wanted to just briefly talk about. Last week, recorded and played them not live. They're up on Halitics. Hope you'll check them out with Kristen H. That I posted Saturday morning, and of course with friend of Halitics, Carlos Childs, and Kristen's a friend of Halitics. Everyone's a friend of Halitics. You come on my program, and we have a nice dialogue, and it's mutually rewarding, I hope. Then you're a friend of Halitics. I was watching a video from some time ago, guy who used to be a friend of Halitics, but no longer comes on the program. In fact, completely ghosted me, and it's very upsetting to me. It's very disappointing. I know I handled certain disagreements with that individual poorly. I have apologized for doing so, but my apology wasn't I think it was a sincere apology, but it wasn't framed perhaps as generously as it could have been, shall we say. But what really frustrates me about all that is this was somebody that I really disagree with on the Democratic Party, which if you look at the thumbnail for today's program, I say, hey, no less evil. That refers to the Democratic Party. And this just doesn't go over well with folks, especially people who are, with many folks. Many people just don't want to believe it, refuse to acknowledge the evidence, push back hard, and maybe they're right. Look, they would say, well, here's the ways that the Democratic Party is less evil. And I don't know, maybe they're right. I don't think they are. I think overall, and there's your thumbnail for today's program, no less evil. And put the Welcome Fest up there. You can see the donkey, the Welcome Fest. This was the centrist Dems, the corporate Dems, the aggressive pro-Israel lobby represented, including Alyssa Slotkin, Jared Golden from Maine. He's the one that famously AOC said, oh, yeah, we can reach out to centrists like Jared Golden. He supported Medicare for all. Yeah, one time in a non-election year when it didn't matter, he did sign on to the bill, and then he immediately pulled back. And at that, you don't see his name there because it's covered up a little bit. You can see Richie Torres, one of the most aggressive Zionists in Washington. So certainly on the Democratic side. So that's one aspect of your Democratic Party, the Welcome Fest, where they had no no representative workers, no pro-working folks were speaking there. They were all represented. The guest speakers were either the Congress members themselves or various NGOs, centrist groups. Third Way was there, polling organizations. Not one labor leader, not one rank and file worker was invited to speak, or if they were invited, not one did speak. Not one consumer advocate was at the, quote, Welcome Fest. They weren't welcome there, for sure. That's the center wing of the Democratic Party. They say, well, Hal, that's not really fair. You're blaming, you're attacking all Democrats because of the genocidal support, the support for the genocide that some of the Democrats, people like Matty Iglesias, right? He was invited to that. He's a huge, he's an Israel supporter. They had some skit too. I don't have the video here, but I think you can get a generational change with Jen Perlman. They had some skit where they made fun of activists who were against, standing up against Israel. But, some might say, well, that's not really fair, Hal. You're criticizing all the Democrats based on a few of them, right? They're not all Richie Torres's and Haley Stevens. I don't know that she was there, by the way, or they're not all Alyssa Slotkins. And, that's true. There's Ro Khanna's in the Democratic Party, too. And Ro says a lot of things that I really, really like, but I'm not going to exempt. There's AOCs. But the problem is the Ro Khannas and the AOCs still vote for, the same center-right, the same corporatists to lead the party. So it doesn't really matter. In the end, what matters is who's your speaker, Nancy Pelosi. Who's your minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. And they vote virtually by acclamation in those very, very, very problematic people. Ro Khanna has been a little bit better on the rhetoric for sure. But he still enjoys completely the perks of office that none of you get. Look at all that trading. Look at all that insider trading his family's done. Now, he says, it's not me, it's my wife. 500, this is according to Quant Quiver, I think it's called, or Quiver Quint, something like that. $545 million in trading. Now, he doesn't have that much money, but you just keep trading the same, you keep churning your assets over and over, which I think is a bad strategy. And I haven't even gotten the sense that the Khanna family has profited like the Pelosi family. Khanna trades far more, by the way, than Pelosi, but the Pelosis are much richer. So it's not always a good idea. In fact, I would say it's a bad idea to make lots of trades. Of course, if you know that a stock is going to benefit because you're debating or you're about to vote on a legislation that will benefit a particular stock, well, then of course you would buy that stock if you're corrupt, if you're taking advantage of your situation. And that is apparently what Ro Khanna is doing. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. I'd love to talk to you. We always center those who are suffering the most as a result of the ascendancy of the corporate elites, and their apparatchiks, right? Like the corporate lawyers and the investment bankers. So we always center their victims, the victims of the oligarchy. And those victims, more than anywhere else in the world right now, are centered in Gaza, in Palestine. It's horrible. I will not stop talking about that as long as the genocide continues. Gaza death toll nears 55,000 as Israel continues brutal war. Really, it's a slaughter on the Palestinians. And you can see the subheadline there, more than 126K Palestinians injured. Now, remember, guys, these numbers are very, very conservative. They undercount greatly. We just don't know how great the undercount is. They could undercount by I drew the math right, by 90%, something like that, which would mean there's over 500,000 dead Gazans. I've heard that number bandied about, right? I don't know that it's accurate, but when you look at the utter devastation that the Israeli military has brought, it is possible. It is possible. So we know that 100,000 plus are dead. We know now that at least 5%, I think if I did the math right, of Palestinians have been injured. That's a very, very conservative figure. That's as of today. And the weekend was a terrible weekend. It was really brutal. It was really painful. And pain is something that you continue to have. Once you're dead, you're not feeling pain anymore. You're just dead. So a lot of people in Gaza that were living are not feeling any pain now because they're dead. But the survivors feel a tremendous amount of pain. The injured feel a tremendous amount of pain. The moms and dads who've lost their babies, the orphans, the widows, the widowers, they're all feeling the pain of the American empire and its ally, Israel. It's hard to look at it, say, well, are we their ally or are they our ally? Are they doing our bidding or are we just simply giving them everything they want? And I kind of incline more towards the latter. So the number we have now, 54,927 Gazans killed. including 230 Friday through Sunday, 230 dead, killed. And since March 18 through today, Trump and Netanyahu, my count comes up to 4,652, probably 2,000 children or so. It's just so awful. And, you don't want to make it seem like it's just run-of-the-mill news. It's just atrocity, atrocity, atrocity. That's what we're doing. That's what we're responsible for. Do most Americans, when I'll debate this with some leftists, and they're like, well, you can't really blame Kamala for not saying she would pursue a different policy because she would have lost the election if she had done that. Well, guess what? She lost anyway. But I don't buy that for a second. Americans don't support the slaughter. Some do. The big money does, of course. I don't have a slide, but let me give real kudos out to the French dock workers in Marseille. This was a story I heard from the Do Dissidents bros, Keaton and Russell. And I think this is when they were filling in for Jimmy on the Jimmy Dore show, but maybe not. What we observed over the weekend, what the report came out, that Marseille, France dock workers are refusing, in fact, not only refusing to load weapons, the the bullet belts, those bullet belts that soldiers wear that they can hook into, I guess, machine guns, automatic weapons that can shoot, many rounds per second even. Incredibly deadly, incredibly destructive. So apparently the Marseille dock workers determined where these weapons or these supplies, these armaments were in the shipment that was going to Haifa, Israel. And they took the boxes, the crates, the containers that contain these bullets, and they moved them, they put them aside. And they said, we're not loading them. We're not. You can't make us. We're not going to do it. And I don't know what the upshot is, but that's a big deal. See, this is why I get so frustrated, so angry at some Democrats, at some quote progressives, unquote, who attack working people and say, oh, they're so ignorant. Look, they voted for Trump. The working class, the union laborers, are doing something that most people aren't doing. They're saying, we are going to use what little power we have, to prevent, to the extent we possibly can, to prevent weapons of death, bullets, from getting to Israel. That's heroism. That's a great thing. And we should respect that. We need to honor that. We need to honor working people who do that without any question at all. There's just a lot of different ways I want to go. I say no less evil. I mean, maybe the way to start with is just this rehabilitation of Elon Musk that some Democrats are focused on, right? Let's bring him on board is I guess the rallying cry, at least among some, maybe those centrists, but not just the centrists. In fact, we'll hear from our good buddy there, Roe, in a little bit. But from Politico, Dems eye a villain to ally arc for Elon Musk. The messy public breakup between two MAGA heavyweights makes some Dems wonder if there's a role for them to play. I wonder if it's for them. I guess they mean for him, a role for him, meaning Musk, because the other MAGA heavyweight obviously is Trump, and I don't think their Dems are looking to bring Trump on board. But there you see, in better times, Obama with Musk back in 2010. And, Obama was a real tech bro type. He apparently spoke very highly of Silicon Valley. He really respected the ethos there, the masters of the universe dynamic that they really promoted among themselves, that they were, the future, that the world belongs to them, that kind of thing. And apparently that was something that really resonated with Obama. And you can see him there with Musk in 2010. And this relationship between the leader of the Democratic Party 15 years ago, and not at that time the world's richest man, but today the world's richest man, clearly has some resonance with some Democrats, including that progressive I told you about that, I sometimes actually like what he has to say, Ro Khanna. So Khanna, according to Politico, is like, yeah, let's reach out to, we should definitely be in a dialogue with Musk. We should ultimately be trying to convince him that the Democratic Party has more of the values that he agrees with. A commitment to science funding, a commitment to clean technology, a commitment to seeing international students like him. All right. I'm sort of skeptical about the clean technology. I don't know why you would think this guy who sends people off into space, where's that commitment? I'm not seeing that. I mean, it's a tremendously fossil fuel intensive transportation, right, mode. To actually shoot people out into space requires a huge amount of fossil fuels. Yes, I believe in electric cars. I certainly think they're better than the alternative. But we've talked about this with Kirsten Stade. Electric vehicles require a huge infrastructure of that fossil fuels contribute to, and that the construction of that infrastructure is very bad for the environment. The idea that this guy with 14 kids who wants to repopulate the planet with his own offspring, his progeny, that he somehow shares the values of the Democratic Party that Ro Khanna espouses? Yeah, I'm not there, Ro. I think what you need to do is focus on reaching out to working people and explaining to them, expressing to them, demonstrating by your actions that the Democratic Party's values are shared by working class Americans. So what are those values? Hard work, responsibility to your family, responsibility to your employer, right? A hard day's work, fair day's pay, fair day's wage. Those are the values that you should be espousing. Love of your family, the value of an education, taking care of your parents when they are, when they're unable to fend for themselves. Those are working class values in this country. Paying your bills on time. Those are the values, Ro, that you should be espousing for the Democratic Party, presenting as Democratic Party values, not, the hucksterism that's rife in Silicon Valley, the dog-eat-dog world that is embraced by these oligarchs, the idea that, you're a shark. If you stop moving, if you stop growing, you die, which is their attitude. Move fast, break things. Who cares who you hurt? That's Silicon Valley, Ro. Those are the values you claim the Democratic Party possesses. I don't disagree. Maybe you're right. But don't expect the working class to follow you. They've already left you to a very significant degree. This party is no less evil. This party is not on the side of poor, struggling, and working people. This party is not on the side of a clean, green environment. I find it very frustrating when I do my program and when I talk to people. And I played a clip for Kristen, I think, over the weekend. I uploaded Saturday, where the Max Blumenthal was saying he finds it so frustrating, so difficult when he talks to Democrats who you can explain to them how bad the Democratic Party is, and they'll kind of nod and agree. Yeah, it was, Kamala's strategy wasn't so good, and maybe she wasn't the best candidate, but how could she lose to Trump? Trump is the real evil. Trump is, and you just throw up your hands. You don't know what to do. It seems impossible to persuade people that no, both parties are terrible. Both parties are anti-life. How do we get there? How do we show that? I just don't know. I just don't know. Don't forget, Halitics. This is the best place on Facebook to continue the dialogue when I'm not live. The best place to continue the dialogue when I am live is just to call me. 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. Phones are working. I checked. I did check that. So that's something to consider. If I'm saying something that you like or maybe something you hate, please let me know what it is, what you feel I'm getting right, what I'm getting wrong. 240-242-5646. And I am going to check I see our great viewer Ari is there with the thank yous. Thank you so much, Ari. Greatly appreciated. 240-242-5646. And he had some really nice posts too over the weekend, I think, in Facebook. So I appreciate that as well. I wasn't going to go there. Let me, yeah. So Ro Khanna, this is interesting. So there's a little bit of a dispute because this is, your Democratic Party, the problems with it. I also wanted to just share the news, very unfortunate, although wholly expected news, that the Freedom Flotilla boat with Greta Thunberg on it was intercepted by the Israeli military, and they are being taken to Israel right now. I don't know what they're going to do with the folks on that ship. They are not, as far as I know, they have not violated any international laws. My understanding is they weren't even in Israeli waters or Palestinian waters at the time the boat was boarded, was pirated. They use the term pirates. I think that's fair. They were simply taken captive illegally. We'll talk about that and a specific. What really grabbed me about that story was the response in the New York Times from readers, generally on the side of Greta, generally on the side of the aid to get to Gaza and against Israel. And that's really tremendous that even with all the hasbara that the New York Times just simply spoon feeds to its subscribers and its readers, even with all of that, most people, they recognize it's a load of crap. So the next step has to be, yes, we know we're being lied to. Now we need to move away from the duopoly, from the oligarchy. So here's Roe. I took on my own party. I ran against incumbents 3 times. I endorsed Bernie Sanders. So all that, braggadocio there. And I've called for competitive primaries even when we have an incumbent. So he's saying, hey, that's like David Hogg. So that's good, right? Like I said, we like Roe sometimes. But you know what, Roe? You lose all the credibility with all that stock trading. And I understand it's your wife. It's not you. It doesn't matter. You're using your office to try to enrich yourself. You're using the public trust. You're abusing it to enrich yourself. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't. You got to stop doing that. You lose, again, all credibility, in my opinion, when you do that. So he, though, there is saying, hey, look, David Hogg, we support him. He's great. Here's what and we'll get back to the Musk story in just a sec, because, Kana is a Musk supporter now. Yes, let's reach out to him. Let's bring him on board. Let's get Kana to be a Democrat. We share values. We have the same love for science funding. And he also correctly, David Hogg, whatever. Here's what Nomiki Konst, also a Democrat. She's from New York, Manhattan. A lot of questions about her, a lot of doubts about her sincerity. She certainly has been loyal to the Democrats, very critical of the Green Party, for example. So here's Konst. I stand by this corporate-backed David Hogg. So there's a little feud there between her and Kana. Kana likes Hogg. Konst calls him corporate-backed. He's a tool for the consultants to sabotage Ken Martin. He's the new DNC chair. To sabotage Martin's reforms before he could even get started. And then I love this. Hogg is not a progressive or reformer. And Nomiki quotes Holly Otterbein. I have no idea who that is. Scoop, DNC chair Ken Martin told party leaders in a recent private meeting that he's unsure about his ability to lead the party because of infighting created by Hogg. How terrible is this Hogg? He wants Democratic progressives, younger Democrats, to go after the old and infirm in the party, those who maybe even are dead, like Jerry Connolly, or on the way to death. But Nomiki doesn't like that because it's going to sabotage the reforms by Ken Martin. And I ask, what reforms? Reforming Elon Musk as a good billionaire? Is that what she's arguing for? Because I don't know what reforms Ken Martin is talking about. This all goes again to this idea that there's something redeemable in the Democratic Party. There isn't. There isn't. It is long past time to move on. I guess I could do that like Konst just did. It is long past time, and to move on. Here, let's play this clip. And by the way, thank you, TYT. Thank you, the Young Turks. One of my viewers is a fan of the Young Turks. Sometimes I like the Young Turks. I don't always hate them. I do think that they're not as prepared to go as far as I am when it comes to Dem abandon, for sure. I do like the fact that they have taken on the woke wing of the progressive movement on occasion. I do agree with their take there that it is that wing is actually counterproductive and is actually helping the billionaire class keep poor, struggling, working people divided. 100% on that. But here is the man that, according to Nomiki Konst, is trying to make needed reforms to the Democratic Party.
There are a lot of good billionaires out there that have been with Democrats who share our values, and we will take their money, but we're not taking money from those bad billionaires.
All right, so there's the good ones, and there's I just wanted you to see, because there's Anna. So I do give the Young Turks all credit for that clip. I appreciate it. I mean, I guess they took it from Politico, but I couldn't find the Politico clip, so I appreciate their putting that up there. So I don't care. Take money from whomever you want. But here's the issue. You need to stand for something. When you say there's good billionaires and bad billionaires, what do you stand for? Is the Democratic Party foursquare for working people, bringing jobs back from overseas, living wage, Medicare for all, peace? Because I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen any agenda, any platform, any requirement. What the DNC should be telling Democrats, including those third wayers and those welcome fest Democrats, your policies don't jibe with what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build a working class party. You don't have one worker at your event. We're trying to build a pro-peace party. You don't have one peace activist at your event. So we are going to take you on. In fact, you don't get to go. I don't know how that works. I think the party can just say, You don't get to be a Democrat. You violated our rules. Our rules include four-square support. You want to run as Democrat, you got to support Medicare for all. I don't know, because I don't know how those party things work, but I don't think anyone gets to be a member of the party. The party can reject you. And that's what a real reformer would do, not a faux reformer, despite what Nomiki Konst has to say. All right, 240-242-5646. I'll get to the Freedom Flotilla in a moment, but I do want to just get back real quick to this whole idea. What was it? About the rehabilitation of Musk. Yeah, he shares our values. So, and then welcome. So the rehabilitation of Musk. So here's Linda Kerr. I presume Obama is good with it. I mean, he and Musk apparently at least share some history together based on that image that Politico posted. But the picture, here's Liam Kerr, I don't know, could be pronounced either way, I suppose. Co-founder behind the group. We mentioned Welcome Fest, not one worker at that event, not one representative working class people spoke at that event. Of course, we should open the door, as Liam Kerr says, because, well, we don't want anyone wildly distorting politics, which he has a unique, it's not really unique. There's other billionaires whose money can distort politics, but ultimately, yeah, we should bring him on board because it's a zero-sum game. Anything that he does that moves more towards Dems hurts Republicans. So, see, this is the framing that Democrats want you to believe. It's a zero-sum game. Either Dems win or Republicans win. It's between those two. All of the beans are going to Democrats and Republicans. Now, if we take a few beans away from Republicans, that's good for Democrats. If we give a few beans if Elon Musk gives a few beans to Democrats, well, that's bad for Republicans, which is basically, how you are trained to believe is good when you read your New York Times. Every single story, basically every other story at a minimum, is telling you that Trump is corrupt, Trump is a liar, Trump is a harasser, Trump is, Satan himself. And there's the thing that works, why that works, is Trump does really bad things. Trump really is a buffoon. He really is a huge problem. But because the New York Times, not lesser except the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, frame Trump as the enemy rather than the corporate elite, the oligarchs, the fascists, including Trump, but not limited to Trump, including the Democratic Party elites, because they present it as uniquely Trump as the evil, then when Liam Kerr, the centrist or center-right, really, Welcome Fest chair, or whatever he is, when he says, yeah, we'll take Musk because if he gives us some support, that hurts Republicans, which is what you're trained to believe is a good thing. That's the only good thing. We have to stop Trump. We have to defeat Trump. So, yeah, we'll welcome Musk. But it's only a zero-sum game as long as we accept the framing that all of the political beans go to either the Democrats or the Republicans. What we have to do is start taking beans away from both parties. We have to say no. If you want Elon Musk's beans, you ain't getting my beans. That's what you have to do. That's what we have to do. That's what I am trying desperately to do here. All right, 240-242-5646. We'd love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. As long as the voters accept the frame that there's only two parties, there's only two powers, you have to choose between them, then we lose. then we lose because they're both evil and one is not. I used to believe the Democrats were less evil, and maybe they used to be less evil. I do truly believe, and I don't only believe it, I mean, I think the evidence is very powerful, very strong, that LBJ was less evil than Nixon. I didn't run for re-election in 68. I believe Humphrey was less evil than Nixon. I believe that Al Gore was significant, much less evil than George W. Bush. But that's your parents' Democratic Party. That's your grandparents' Democratic Party. That's your great-grandparents' Democratic Party. That ain't today's Democratic Party. Israeli Foreign Ministry said early Monday, that would be today, that a Gaza-bound ship carrying a dozen pro-Palestinian activists and some aid had been diverted toward Israeli shores, and that its passengers were expected to return to their home country. So there it is. Israel boards the ship, takes it over. And I thought it was really interesting, the responses, because, again, I think they show how the worm has turned against Israel. There really just is, it seemed clear to me, and I'm going to show you some pro-Israel Zionist-type Hasbara that was posted. And it gets support, but I was really taken, and I don't have all the clips. I was really taken by how many people were really, really pro Greta, really, really pro Freedom Flotilla, really, really pro-Palestine, and really, really anti-Israel. And it shouldn't come as a surprise because Democrats now have moved significantly away from Israel. And the people who read the New York Times are mostly Democrats. So here's one of probably the AIPAC stooges posting. It is unambiguously a publicity front, just for publicity in support of one side. Okay, well, first of all, why shouldn't there be publicity? That's good. We want to publicize the genocide, right? Isn't that really important? But second of all, it's not just publicity. They do have bags of rice. They did want to provide some supplies. And third, what else are they supposed to do? I saw this criticism from somebody. They're like, well, it's not really going to make any difference, even if they were able to get into Gaza. So they shouldn't do it because it's not going to make any difference. Well, my answer to you is, if you don't think it's going to make a difference, what should they do? What would make a difference? How would you propose that people who are horrified by Israel's crimes, how would you propose that we respond more effectively, since you claim that what Greta's doing isn't effective? What do you think is a better way to go? So this poster doesn't like it. Look, there's a lot of recommends. Let's hope that Israel can defeat Hamas soon, the theocratic hate group that rules Gaza, that so many progressives seem to love. So much wrong with that crap. Not that progressives love Gaza, or that, let's put it this way, there are plenty of progressives. There really are, and it nauseates me, it sickens me. I was looking at a Facebook post from somebody, a Facebook friend, who's absolutely progressive on every issue but Israel. And I guess if you say being pro-Palestine is progressive, then they're not progressive on that one issue. But no, on everything else, on healthcare and education, on, all the, the usual suspect issues, they're progressive. So there are plenty of progressives who support Israel and the genocide. And those of us against what Israel's doing, we don't necessarily love Hamas. We've been through this before. We just hate seeing people slaughtered, hate seeing children being murdered. Defeat Hamas, return the hostages, and end the war. So that's the answer that this person posts. And a lot of recommends. So you'd say, well, how? Wait a sec. I thought you said that most people there don't support Israel, that there's really been a sea change. And so here's my response. Here's a response. There were 3 responses to this, which I'm going to show you. Now, usually the first post gets the most recommends by far. This post got almost as many, and I saw so many pro Palestine post that got tons. We'll show you another one. At the start of the war, intelligence sources said there were 25,000 Hamas members in Gaza. The death toll in Gaza is now at 55,000. Adam was knowing Hamas is still a viable force. Bad aim on Israel's part, or is there more to this war? So just making a very clear point. It's not this. What Israel's doing is not about defeating Hamas. What Israel's doing is about eradicating the Palestinian people. It's about eliminating the Gazan people. It's about genocide. Here's another response. Now remember, that got 32 likes. The original post got 36. If a response gets 32, that's a ratio. That means the response is ultimately more popular because a lot of people move on after the first post and they don't look at the second and third and such. Opposing the deliberate starvation and blockade of medicine to 2 million people is not supporting Hamas. Great point. To deliberately conflate this is disingenuous. It's dishonest. And there again, this is a response to a response. 22 recommend. So again, people see through the New York Times propaganda, the crap. Let me show you another one. Here's a response that really shows you how I believe there's a real sea change in public opinion. Whereas when the war, let me put it this way, when there was an attack by Hamas at the festival, and close to over 1,100 people were killed, Israel had a lot of support. There was a lot of sympathy for Israel, and that began to go away, evaporate when people saw the extraordinarily cruel and completely disproportionate, completely inappropriate, completely murderous rage that Israel used to respond to Gaza. And people started saying, this is wrong, this is evil, this is cruel, this is sadistic, this is genocide, this is Nazis. And more and more people saw that. I saw it right away. A lot of people didn't. A lot of people got mad at me, unfriended me, ghosted me because of this, including family members who were very, I wouldn't say they canceled me, but they weren't happy with what I had to say. But as time went on and more people were shown dead, when even the New York Times covered stories like doctors report that children are coming in with bullets in their brains, with bullets in their chests, little children. When even the New York Times posts those, reports, that more and more people are like, yeah, no, this isn't right. And so now you see 82 recommend this post compared to 36 that liked the one that was pro-Israel. Kudos to Greta and her team for trying. Israeli spin machine is alive and well, unfortunately, as Israel uses the word Hamas as an excuse for everything it does. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are blown up because of Hamas. The remaining Palestinians are starving because of Hamas. Israel can keep 70% of Gaza for itself because of Hamas. And obviously they're being very ironic. So 100% with that poster. And again, the point is that public opinion is shifting away from Israel more and more, even in this country, even with all the media that is completely siding with Israel. The Jake Tappers of the world, the Dana Bashes, the NYT. Trying to feed starving Palestinians does not make one an anti-Semite. That's a response to the New York Times calling, not the New York Times, I'm sorry, Israel claiming that Greta Thunberg is an anti-Semite. Trying to feed starving Palestinians, of course, does not make one an anti-Semite. The semantic lies and dehumanizing that the Israeli government engages in needs to stop. Now, here's where you see the liberal, right? The New York Times liberal, right? They are not fully on board a single state, one state solution. They can't quite embrace the idea that the theocracy that is Israel does not, does not comport with humanity. So they're trying to like split the baby still. While the situation is complex and dates back over a century, the fact remains that without their own country, Palestinians will be marginalized and forced into ever more desperate actions. A two-state solution is the only way to end this madness. And of course, we know in the end, a two-state solution is not the way to end the madness. Two-state solution would ultimately lead to more killing, as we see, for example, in Pakistan, India, right, where they were two countries that were forced apart, with the Muslims going into Pakistan and the Hindus keep maintaining India. And there are two nuclear powers who are close to war periodically, and sometimes actually are at war. So that didn't solve anything. That Pakistan created almost at the exact same time as Israel, as a matter of fact. Two-state solution, not the answer. One-state solution. Now, some might say, well, but how? Because I was thinking a lot about this. What about Ireland, the UK, right? There's a two-state solution there. You have Ireland and you have the United Kingdom. So isn't that the same thing? And of course it's not, because Ireland was a separate country. The Irish were always in Ireland. It's not like the Irish were forced out of, Northern Ireland and pushed into Ireland. There were Northern Irish, and there were Irish. Now, the Northern Irish, as I understand it, have said, hey, we're good. We're good. We like being part of Great Britain, or the United Kingdom. I guess they're not part of Great Britain because that's an island, but we're good. We like being part of the United Kingdom. And I understand that. Northern Ireland's a lot richer than the rest of Ireland. The roads are maintained better. There are definitely benefits to be part of England. Be in the same country as the wealthier, more powerful country, England, United Kingdom. But Ireland is Ireland. It's a separate entity. It's not a two-state solution. Ireland was swallowed up by the United Kingdom, and now they were coughed back. And that's what ended the strife, was when ultimately agreement was made between the two countries. And England just stopped occupying Ireland altogether, kept its army out of there altogether. So that's what needs to happen here. Not a two-state solution, but where Israel gives full political and economic rights to Gaza. It stops occupying Gaza. It stops controlling Gaza. The people of Gaza have complete self-determination. And hey, I would be good with that. If they want to have a vote and they want to say, yeah, we don't want to be part of Israel, we want to be our own country, okay, fine, do that. But to me, the best solution, the best answer is you have one state. And that includes the West Bank, that includes Gaza, that includes Israel. Even if a poster at the New York Times says, yeah, we need a two-state solution, the fact that they recognize Israel's crimes, that Israel's guilty, that Israel's murderous, the fact that they recognize this really does show a huge sea change in the way people perceive this conflict. And again, post after post is showing the sympathy that Americans now have for Palestine and not for Israel. So that's good. Public opinion is catching up with the reality on the ground, despite all the propaganda from the US government, all the propaganda from the American media, all the propaganda from very powerful institutions like colleges and universities. But guess what? Our political parties are totally deaf to this, totally ignore it. They are still fully behind the occupation, the siege, and the genocide. There's no meaningful action by either party. Now you could say, well, there's a Sanders bill and there's an AOC bill, and those, are the right steps. Yes. but they know they're performative. They know it's not going to make a difference. And what would make a difference is if the Democratic Party said, the DNC said, you got to choose. Either you're a Democrat or you're pro-Israel. You don't get to be both. That's be a sea change. It's not going to happen. And because of that, because it's not going to happen, because this is fundamentally an immoral party, we have to move on. We have to go in a different direction. We have to embrace Green Party. We have to embrace true independence like Shama Sawant and others who are pro-people, pro-life. I was going to talk a little bit about why the Green Party doesn't have more support. That was posted in one of these groups, sort of a debate group that I'm in on Facebook. It's a really good question why, and I will probably share it on Halitics so you can see my response there. But there was a real interesting back and forth because, I said, hey, this is what we need. Somebody said, well, it's what the Green Party stands for. So obviously Americans aren't buying it and they don't like they're not buying what you're selling. So I gave my explanation for why I think the Green Party isn't more popular. And I'm going to share that. I may talk tomorrow with Arlen about that as well. But I don't want to belabor it right now. I'll say this. The reasons I believe are not really that hard to understand. They're not really very challenging. They all make a lot of sense as to why the Green Party isn't a force. So I'll talk about that tomorrow. I think see if Arlen will agree to that. I mean, I'm sure he will. What I also want to talk about, though, today is a little bit more about Elon Musk, because I think Elon Musk is somewhat of a not individually. I don't find him a particularly interesting or fascinating person, but what he does, what he represents, I think tells us a lot about human nature. And it also tells us a lot about where we are and why we are where we are. So, I mean, first of all, look at this, 14 kids, right? And I guess he has had them with 4 women. So when you see that, and one thing I don't really like doing on my program, I didn't really like this in Monterey sometimes when it was on KRXA, is that there are certain things, there are certain phenomena that seem to me so understandable, so clear as to why they are the way they are. But many people don't get it, and they won't get it, and they refuse to get it, and they fight over it. And that starts to really, really rankle and frustrate me. So it frustrates me, for example, I'll give you some other areas that frustrate me before we talk about Musk and why his 14 children and what that represents frustrates me. But it frustrates me that so many people continue to argue that we need to support the Democratic Party, many of whom are people who, benefit from that, right? I mean, they're actually in the belly of the beast. So, of course, they want you to keep feeding that beast because they're getting a little bit of a snack when you feed the beast. But it's very frustrating, and, they're not, you can't change their minds. So that's very frustrating for me. It's very frustrating for me when I see progressives or, people on the left who are, continue to support the idea that trans girls and women should be competing in women and girls only sporting competitions. That seems to me intellectually indefensible, but also politically incredibly stupid. It's not popular. 3/4 of Americans don't believe that trans girls and women should be competing against biological girls and women in sports, females. Now, I want to say about that, I have a lot of sympathy, tremendous amount. I was talking about this with my family. it must be awful to be a trans person. I mean, it must be so hard. And I believe they exist, right? I'm not someone who's saying, oh, there's no such thing as being trans. No, there is. I think there may be various explanations and I don't know that there has been an increase in the number of trans people than there used to be. But I think there may be reasons. I think we make it very, very hard for girls. I could see why there'd be more trans boys, because it's very hard to be a girl in our society. It's worse and worse. Social media has made it so hard, the body shaming especially, but so much of being a girl, I think, is really tough. But being a boy is really tough too, right? Their suicides are up for boys. The ability to make a living is, young adolescent males are looking at a very uncertain future. If you're not in the upper middle class as a male, if you don't have decent future prospects at a minimum, it's very hard to find a mate. So males and females, young boys and girls, have it really hard in our society. And you can see why they would think, oh my God, being a boy sucks. Maybe it would be better to be a girl. Being a girl is so hard. It's so awful. Boys have it so much better. I can sort of get that. I mean, it seems like extreme, but yeah, maybe there's something to that theory that we made life so hard for young people that they feel like they're in a cage and they're looking for any way out. So maybe there's truth to that. I don't know. And one way out would be to change your sex or your gender. I get that. I don't know if I believe it, but I believe it's certainly plausible to me. And we just don't provide support for our children. It's terrible. We don't. It's awful. It's wrong. And being trans must be so tough. I get that. But and I've heard, and I believe this too, that trans athletes who are successful, who win races, who are, contributing members of winning teams, they feel better. But there's a huge cost. That their better, their state of mind, their healthier state of mind is coming at the expense of girls, of biological girls. It absolutely is. And it's not a level playing field. So I find this is so obvious to me, and yet many people refuse to get it, refuse to acknowledge it. And that pisses me off. I don't like that. We got to be able to have honest discussion, honest debate. So if you say to me, oh no, they don't have an advantage, that's just BS. That's just a load of crap. It's obvious. And even if it's true that with enough hormone therapy and with this and with that, and we, make Seabiscuit carry an extra 25 pounds of weights when he races so that the other horses have a chance, even then, it's crazy. Is that what we want to do? We want to have so much testing of trans athletes to make sure they don't have an advantage? That seems awfully intrusive. There are better ways. There are many better ways. One way is you just have groups of people. You could have, for example, co-ed sports. You could have, not all sports to be co-ed, absolutely not. I mean, of course, you need to have all girls and certainly all girls sports, because otherwise girls wouldn't succeed in really competitive sports. But yeah, you have kickball teams, you have mixed volleyball, you have mixed tennis. You have golf teams that have 2 women, 2 girls, 2 boys on it. If they're, to the extent you have people playing, you're in an area where people play golf. So certainly you can do all of those things. And then trans athletes would feel part of that, would feel like they're contributing, would feel included. Those are all ways to get where we want to go without excluding biological girls who would be at a disadvantage when competing against trans athletes. So I find it very, very frustrating that people don't get this. It just is so clear cut. It's so obvious to me. what is also obvious is what you see in Elon Musk. I mean, why would somebody want to be the richest man in the world? Like, why would you be driven? And here's the answer. Because this guy is in a position to repopulate the planet. I mean, his actions are very, very destabilizing. They're causing all manner of problems. But those problems, he's so far above them. I mean, he's like a pharaoh. He's an emperor. He's like a Genghis Khan, right? So, of course, women are going to want to have his babies, even if he's not around, because the chances are they will have extraordinary opportunities themselves to reproduce and have many, many children. And the gene that causes you to behave in ways that maximize your likelihood of having children is going to be passed down. Right? That entrepreneurial gene, that risk-taking gene. It's all going to get, his genes will be passed down because he engaged in incredibly successful behaviors with respect to aggregating wealth, accumulating wealth and power for himself. And if you say, well, his father was rich, that's true. So it's the same genes, right? They just keep getting passed down. Those people who act like that, who are impelled to act like that, pass their genes on. Now, of course, some won't, right? I mean, he's going to have a lot of kids. Some of them are going to be flops. And in a few generations, some of them probably will waste the millions or billions that are showered on them. But some won't. So again, you get that concentration of the gene that causes you to behave in ways that lead you to aggregate a tremendous amount of wealth and power. And the reward is 14 children or more. Some would say, well, what about women? Why? There are women who have 14 children? Sure. But if a woman has 14 children, she's got to spend her entire time. That's why men act this way, women don't. You don't see women entrepreneurs, not nearly to the same degree. There are some, but far fewer. Because to the extent that you spend all your time and energy, if you're a woman, focusing on your career, being successful, taking over other companies, building an incredibly popular and successful automobile, well, you're not going to be able to spend that time raising your own children, making sure that they have lots of resources, that they're healthy, that they're nurtured. You don't have time for that. You might be able to have 2, maybe 3, right? But even that is going to be a major impediment. Raising those children, that's going to be a major impediment to business success. And no one else is going to have the same interest or invest the same genetic, have the same genetic investment in your kids as you do, except maybe your husband. But if he's spending all that time taking care of your kids with him, he's not out himself amassing wealth, fortune, and having more children, impregnating more children. So the behavior that Musk's engaging in is a perfect example of evolutionary psychology and why it's accurate. Different reproduction, different techniques lead to different forms of success when it comes to reproductive strategies between men and women because of the differences in the ability of men and women to have children and the way men and women have children and the number of children that men and women can have. So this is obvious. And what's the answer to it? We recognize this and we say, okay, we don't want anyone getting $100, $200 billion. We don't want anyone being able to single-handedly create a village of children of their own. So we're going to tax almost all of it away. Not all of it. You know what? If Elon Musk is really that good at business, he amasses a few $100 million, okay. Fine. Let him have it while he's alive. And then when he dies, we'll tax most of that rest of it. That's the way you respond. It's better for women and for most men, not for Elon Musk, but Elon Musk's success is coming at the expense of other men. And it's also coming at the expense of women because now he's got these 4 women who, they have to share him. He's not invested with them. It's a terrible, terrible model to allow a small number of people, mostly men, to aggregate enormous amounts of wealth for themselves. And it happens because we have a society that allows it, and it happens because it provides an enormous genetic advantage to the organism, the male organism that's able to amass all that wealth. We need to do something about that. The way we do it is we tax it away. We don't let anyone get that rich. Democratic Party, they're good with billionaires. We got our good billionaires. That's their attitude. No, it's never good for one person or one family to have everything while lots of families have nothing at all. That's never good. The individual might be okay. I'll grant you that. But it's never good for society. And that's why we have to move away from both parties. All right, that's going to do it for me today. I will talk a little bit about the Green Party's failures, or let me say it differently. Why? That's not a fair way to put it at all. I will talk a little bit tomorrow with Arlen. We'll have an Arlen Tuesday, but I'm going to try to force myself to remember to discuss with Arlen why I believe the Democratic Party hasn't had the kind of success attracting and appealing to more Americans that I believe its policies should warrant. Have a great rest of your day.